What's up, nerds? Welcome back. Today I'm talking about Blue and Gold number 3, where we get introduced to the character of Buggles. So before we start out with this, I do want to mention one thing because I didn't mention it when I was streaming about DC Fandom, that they also kind of talked about the Blue Beetle. Is it a movie or a series? Whichever. The thing that's coming out with them soon. And I'm actually really excited for it because I like that version of Blue Beetle and I also like this version of Blue Beetle. Like, I love both of them. And I kind of just want to talk about that for just a second because I do love Jaime as a character, like as Blue Beetle, tokenized though he is, because yeah, he is another character named Blue Beetle who I mean he's Mexicano. So that's like the difference. That's the delineation really with the two of them, right? But also the difference is like their costumes, their powers, like, you know, he's not just a reskinned Ted Cord. Jaime is his own character. He doesn't have like any of that, like, not that he's stupid or anything, but he doesn't really have that technological know-how the way that Ted does, and he's never like run his own company the way that Ted has. So I mean, that's kind of like the difference. Like, they made him his own thing and they still kind of like tied him into the greater lineage by giving him the beetle that originally started out with the original Blue Beetle that actually gave Ted Cord his costume. So I mean, there's that like link to a lineage, but at the same time they gave him his own thing, like with the power armor, and he's kind of more like dealing with space stuff usually. But then he's also like Teen Titan, so I really love both of the characters, and that right there is one way that you could do a tokenized character and have it be okay, because at least, like I said, you have this one where they kind of like always have him kind of hanging out with Booster Gold, which I get it. I actually have them. I think I mentioned this before. I have them over there, like the pops. I have it on my thing, whatever. And then with Blue Beetle, like he's always, like I said, with Teen Titans. So I mean, you kind of have that difference depending on like which one. Kind of makes it sort of like a Green Lantern type of thing, but even more, you know, separated. But anyway, let's kind of talk about the story that we have here, because if you remember, they're being pursued, but well, not really they. Earth, as we're going to find out, is being pursued by this woman, the Omnizon. So she's kind of like walking in, and the people are looking at her like, "Is that Wonder Woman?" And another one says, "No, that has to be Black Canary." And I don't know why that's the case, but anyway, so she shows up to the UN, and she's basically like demanding questions because she sees the flags, and she's like, "Are these like denoting like royalty or something? Are they tributes or markers of some kind? I assume they represent your royal families." And some woman's like, or some dude actually, is like, "You're kidding, right? This is the United Nations, lady." Then they basically just explain to her like the flags represent all the different nations of Earth. And then one woman says, "And the ruling class governments behind them." To which she's like, "Ruling classes?" She's like, "No, that's impossible. The only ruler of this world is me." And this is where she like throws this, I don't know what it is, like a buzz saw type of thing, and she kind of cuts some of the flags. And then she takes this little gem, makes a mark on the ground, and then it just immediately flares to life like this. So she's basically saying like, it's time for y'all to all of like to acknowledge that I am your ruler and all that shit. But anyway, we go over to Booster, who is trying to get into the like space that they're renting, and he's telling the dude like, "You know, we have a lease, you can't stop me from going in." And you even have some people in the back like, "Yeah, let him in." But he's saying like, "You can't go in because you haven't paid first month's rent already," which I mean, that's what you got to do. So then he also has like the cop, or is he just security, who's standing there. He's like, "I sort of remember you being on the team during its inferior days," because Booster tried to tell him like, "You know, I'm Justice League, right?" So that's when the security tells him like, "Yeah, not during one of the better known eras," which is unfortunate. It was a good run. But anyway, he's telling the guy like, "Look, friend, I can call you friend, right?" And he's like, "We just met." So he tells him it's a glitch or a counting error or locked up in cyberspace, but I guarantee it's on the way. So he's just like, "Yeah, well, on the way doesn't count. Like, whenever you have the actual money, then you can get the keys to go inside and shit." So they basically told him like, "Just get the hell out of here." And then he asks Skeets, he's like, "Please tell me you weren't recording any of that. Like, you're not streaming right now." He's like, "Well, since this was supposed to be your triumphant day, yeah, of course I was." So he's just like, nuts. And then he tells them, "In monitoring viewer comments, I regret to inform you that they are overwhelmingly negative." And he's like, double nuts. So Everybody's just kind of like talking shit about him and everything. And then we see this woman who's kind of like silhouetted almost, but we'll find out more about who she is later because she's kind of saying like, "Oh, Michael." Obviously knows his first name, and she's like, "When will you learn that those who live by the sword of publicity can die by it as well?" So he basically starts telling all the fans like, "Don't you worry, we will get this fixed." And then he like kind of takes off, trying to get the hell out of there because Skeets asks him like, "Would you like me to read some of the viewer responses?" He's like, "No, I don't need that." He's like, "What I do need is for you to get Ted on the horn." So he calls up Ted, who's kind of like sitting with his broken bug, which he hasn't been able to repair. Because if you remember from, was it last issue or the first issue, where he basically got kicked out of Cord Industries because he wasn't really showing up for them. So they're like, "Yeah, we voted you out." So now he's just trying to figure out like, how do I break this to Booster, who still thinks I have money, and how do I actually fix all of my shit? So that's when Michael like gets in contact with him, and he's finally getting ready to tell him. He's like, I have something to tell you, and it's something bad." But then all of a sudden they see this thing that goes Vabaka Shum, and he even like Booster literally tells him like, "Hold that thought, amigo. Things that go Vabaka Shum are never good." So that's where he notices like the thing that the Omnizon did earlier, where she has this flare, which is basically what we come to find out it is. It's just like a gigantic flare. So he sees that and he's like, "Yeah, I should go and check that out." And then Skeets is telling him, like, instant analysis suggests the energy is not of earthly origin, to which he says, "That explains my tingling booster sense." And Skeets even asks him, like, "You're what?" And he says, "Saw it in another universe." So, cute. Very cute. Anyway, so he keeps running over to the thing, and as he's running, he gets some people who are asking him to, like, be on their podcast. And then he tells them, like, contact my agent if you want, to be on your thing or whatever, as he's running into this truck to change his clothes. And then we see, because it was the moving truck that had all of his stuff, we see all these people who are like trying to ask Skeets questions about like what's going to happen in the future, and like if they can tell him like, or tell them like who's gonna win the World Series. One guy in the back is asking like, "Can you give me any stock tips?" And he just tells them all that would be very unethical. So they start saying like, "You're liars, you're grifters," and all this shit. And then the dude is still trying. He's like, "Just one stock tip?" So Booster tells him like, "You're bad at PR, but it's okay because we got something better to do right now." So they take off, and he's saying, "Might I suggest you summon the Blue Beetle as backup?" He says, "For a special effects light show? Nah. Besides, Ted seems to have fallen into some kind of deep funk. Not like him to drop the ball." So Skeets like makes fun of him. He's like, typically that's your specialty." So he says, "That's because I'm a vision guy. I see the forest, Ted sees the tree bark. Makes for a good team." So yeah, I guess so, right? And then he says, "Push the stream, Skeets. We are going to give people a show." So this is where she's kind of like demanding that the people who actually run all of the nations, she's thinking the ambassadors run the nations and shit. So she's like bringing all of them out with this energy beam, and they even pass through like the walls and shit. So pretty powerful thing. So she brings them out, and they're asking her like, "What is the meaning of this atrocity?" To which she answers them by saying, "As representatives of several nations, you will pledge your loyalty, armies, and assets, or sacrifice your heads." So that's when Booster shows up, and he says, "You are definitely on the wrong path, sweetie." And she tells him like, "I recognize you. You are one of those who liberated your world's defenders from our ship." So he's the one saying like, "Oh, your ship was the one trying to kidnap the Justice League?" If you'll remember, that's what happened in the first issue. And then he tells her like, "Thus the plot doth thicken." So she says, "They objected to our establishment of a throne here. You are allied with them?" He tells her they wanted to go steady, but I declined, which if you remember, that's a lie. They wanted Blue Beetle, but they didn't want Booster. So he says, "My name's Booster Gold, savior of the multiverse, protector of the time stream, and 3-time Superhero of the Year award winner." So she tells him like, "I am Omnizon, daughter of Lord Kiffin, High Regent of the Bayamore Guard." I'm pretty sure I probably mispronounced some of that, but I mean, it's not really meant to be pronounced by us, right? So she's saying, "And ruling princess of this realm, and I have never heard of you." So Skeets tells her, quite consistent with who those who refer to you as the greatest hero you've never heard of. Or I guess he was telling that to Michael. And so he says, who swings first, her or me? Skeet starts telling him like, well, survival would suggest. He's like, well, don't worry, that's all I needed to hear. So he swings on her, like blasts her or whatever, but of course it doesn't hurt her all that much. And then he asks her, what's with the light show? Like, sure, it gets attention, but it doesn't seem to do much. So that's where she tells him like, this process is well known across the galaxies, as it is a signal of my imperial presence and sign that the subjects of this world must pay tribute. So he's like, you expect presidents, kings, and queens to bend the knee? That is so not going to happen. So she asks him again, like, who speaks for this world? And he says, well, there are like two to Arkham, but we are not your subjects. I do things my way. Always have, always will. So that's when she throws another one of those like disc things that bounces off of his like force field and shit. So luckily he does have that. So she's coming in for another strike, and she's saying like Earth is part of like their system and shit, our system, as it has been for eons. That means you answer to me. When I say kneel, you will do so. And that's where she continues attacking him. And again, the personal force field really does come in handy. So that's when Blue Beetle finally shows up and says, lady, if you expect Booster Gold to bend the knee, you have no idea who you're talking to. And she's like, another who dares to interfere? And he says, they call him the Blue Beetle lady. And might I just say that it's about time you showed up. So this is when he tells him, like, if you remember, he's in a buggy now too. So he tells him like, sorry, I haven't been able to fix the bug, so since I can't fly over traffic, it kind of slows me down and shit. So very reasonable explanation. And then we can see that lady from earlier is showing up. She's kind of like running through the crowd. So Blue Beetle pulls out this thing that I thought it was like some sort of gun, like high-tech gun at first or whatever, until he fires it and we see that it's actually just compressed air. So he shoots her with that, which I mean, I guess just kind of take her off guard for a second, but like I said, no real damage. And so Booster's asking Blue, like, are there any chances she really is like an intergalactic princess? To which he says, we've hung with aliens, cosmic gods, bizarre life forms, and a bleepin' sentient island, so there's no way I'm calling her a liar. But then we see where she's still like giving both of them the business, because she kicks him in the face and then she grabs Booster by the throat and says like, you talk too much. So she flips him over, and then Blue Beetle does this pretty badass move, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I do like this version of Blue Beetle because we've seen in the last few years, like over the last 10 to 15 years, Blue Beetle has always just been shown as somewhat of a joke. You know what I mean? Like, he was someone who was trying too hard, but he was kind of like a, I guess, D-lister, really. So, I mean, it's really nice to see him just be like a hero here, because he does this like flip over, and he's even saying like, I might not have any powers, but that doesn't mean I'm helpless. So he kicks her across the face and kind of proves the point. But as he's standing over, he's kind of like telling her like, we will never like obey you and shit like that. But she just grabs him by the throat too. And then when Booster comes to try and help, she tells him like, if you move, I will crush his throat and everything. So he tells Booster to back off, I got this. So he hits a button on his belt, and this is where Buggles comes out, because we see that that sent a code or like a message, a signal over to Buggles, who activates and comes flying out. This part was pretty funny too, where Skeets is like, oh my, it seems that Mr. Cord, or the Blue Beetle, admires me so much that he created his own version of me. And Booster, being a dumbass, is like, that's a leap of logic. And he's like, are you serious? Like, isn't it obvious? So, anyway, Buggles comes up and tells Omnizon, like, unhand him, but she says not until after he has drawn his last breath. So, that's when Booster's looking up. Yeah, he's, like, looking up and he's like, maybe? So, she immediately, and I say she because we find out from Skeets later on, that apparently Buggles has a feminine voice and personality, so I guess I'm kind of glad that they did kind of clarify that, because it seems like that's something that we actually have to do now. But anyway, so she immediately like blasts Omnizon and shit, and then Booster's just like, what the hell, you killed her? He's like, I mean, Skeets has his faults, and Skeets is like, I do? So he says, but he isn't a murderer. If his Bizarro double is, but then like Skeets is saying, Bizarro, I have always wanted a sidekick, and the new droid fits the bill. So they're like continuing to rescue some of the ambassadors who were about to like fall and shit. If you remember, they were being just levitated up in the sky, I guess you could call it, because it doesn't seem like it was hurting them. But anyway, Blue Beetle says Buggles is not your sidekick, or mine for that matter. It is a technological asset. So Booster's just like, oh, come on. I know a sidekick when I see one. So Booster saying, or Blue's telling him, can we talk where hundreds aren't listening? So he's like, tens of thousands, you mean? So he just tells Skeets to cut the stream and everything, and then they go to talk. And then he says, like, we're not going to be coming back. Like, we'll be back for pics and autographs. But one guy's like, did anyone ask? Anyway, they go over to start talking. And then this is where I was saying, like, Skeets is, like, asking, like, oh, you were programmed, like, with a feminine voice and all that crap. So feminine voice and personality, to which Buggles is like, that bothers you? And we just kind of leave it at that. Anyway, so he's asking him, like, again about our offices. Not sure why you didn't pay the rent, but the moving trucks are still there. Send the money and we can. This is where he finally, like, breaks out and tells him, like, Booster, Michael, I'm sorry, but I can't. The truth is I'm broke. And so he's asking me, he's like, broke? But Cord Industries, like, yeah, they fired me, which means we're not going to have access to the money or a lot of the tech that would have sustained us and shit. So he's immediately saying, like, I can't fix my bug, which is why I'm salvaging what I can to build things like the buggy and Buggles. So he can work on smaller stuff. But anyway, he's like, so, but wait, my announcement, and he says, we'll look like fools if we don't deliver on it. My whole life is one step forward and 5 steps back, nothing but failures, even though I saved the multiverse. So that is true. He actually did at one point. So that's when their old, or his old assistant, Trixie Collins, comes running up. So that's who that was. Anyway, she comes running up and is basically telling him, like, I want to help and everything, because Booster's never been all that great about handling, like, the logistics end. So anyway, he goes in to hug her and everything, and then she tells him, like, I don't know if y'all are willing to do it. I do have some space, since y'all don't have offices or whatever. I do have some extra space that you can use if you want it. And so she's saying it's in the same building as my yoga studio. Not the corporate look you had in mind, but it might work better. And then he tells her, or like Booster tells her, before we commit, you should realize that our rent money disappeared. And then Skeets tells him, like, well, here's a suggestion. Y'all do have, thousands of fans online and everything. So Blue Beetle suggests, like, what about crowdsourcing? The people who watch our live stream, who believe in us. So he says they get to be the hero. So he immediately turns to them. He's like, yes, get with us if y'all want to, like, crowdsource us and all this shit. And then what does he say? And unlike those heroes for you saps, we won't sell out. So a whole bunch of people already in the crowd are like, hey, we're with you. Just let us know where to send you the money and everything. So he's standing there and he says, there's just one problem. Omnizon, you killed her. So Blue Beetle starts explaining to him, like, so it appeared, but appearances can be deceiving. And then he starts saying that basically what Buggles did was actually teleport her to, like, a swamp somewhere in Louisiana. Which is smart, but now, isn't there now a problem for Louisiana? Anyway, so he says, and that Buggles is equipped with a very practical weapon, a transportation beam. So Booster's asking, like, wait, since when did you have the know-how to build a transporter? And he says, let's just say I borrowed the Justice League's tech. As for where she ended up, let's just say that the UN is safe for today, and we have time to figure out how to deal with her. So this is where she's, like, throwing a tantrum in the swamp. She, like, creates this little hologram of them, and then she starts cutting into it, saying, like, I will conquer this planet, and I'm going to do it with basically, like, y'all's severed heads as trophies. So, yeah, and I will wear your skulls as tributes to my victory. So, that's where we leave off on that. And this is just, it was an entertaining story. Like I've always said, I think some of my favorite stories are those that you can kind of pick up and you don't have to have read any of the other stuff to just enjoy the story as it is. So, I mean, yeah, that does definitely set up for, like, a character coming back or whatever, very obviously. But, I mean, I enjoyed the story, like the humor. It's always very well done, and even like the serious emotional bits, like where you can see Ted Kord just, like, going through it. Like, it's all very entertaining. It kind of, like, it makes the characters feel more real when we kind of see that conflict within him where he's trying to figure out, like, how do I fix myself and how do I tell Booster, like, shit's gone sideways for me. But I really enjoy it overall, and I can't wait to keep getting more of this series. It's only an 8-issue limited series, which I think I've mentioned before does bother me. But, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe if this one does well enough, I don't really know if that's going to happen, but if this one does well enough, maybe they'll continue doing more blue and gold stories, which honestly, I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of. But Yeah, I don't know if anybody out there picked this up and read it. Do feel free to let me know if you did. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely make sure to like the video, subscribe, and make sure you are subscribed. Share the video if you would like. I appreciate it. But if you're done here, then go and read a book, especially this one. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.